The purpose of this video is to talk about completing the square. Completing the square is an alternative way to solve quadratic equations. It's also used, and this is foreshadowing some other stuff, it's also used when you're trying to write the equation of a circle or write the equation of a parabola. And so it's not always the easiest way to write and solve an equation using completing the square. But I want to go through the method here so that you have some time to practice with it and get a little bit more familiar with it before we move on to anything else with squares, with parabolas or circles later on in the year. First things first, completing the square does not mean you draw a little square and it's not a four-sided figure here. When we talk about in mathematics, completing the square, what we're looking at is to complete something that I can write in squared form. So I'm going to have a factor times itself, or the lazy way to write it would be a factor squared, is equal to something. And that's what I'm going to use to solve. All right, so that's the square that we are talking about. And so if I take a look, I'm going to go ahead and zoom on in to problem number 1 here. There's a little bit of method to the madness. All right, and so what you want to do is leave the x terms on one side of your problem and take everything else to the other side. So that negative 10 is going to move. Now you may notice there is a big space here. This big space is what we are actually going to complete the square so that I can rewrite this whole expression as something squared. All right. Now, how do you find that? Well, you are going to take your b value, chop it in half, and square it, because that's completely normal. I promise you it does work, all right? And I'll talk you through with some numbers here. So let's take 6, chop it in half. 6 and chopped in half is 3. And if we take 3 and we square it, we would get 9, all right? So what's going to go in this space is plus 9, all right? Now, let's think about this mathematically. When we look at completing the square, we would have one factor that would be multiplying times itself. So I need some number here, the same number, to multiply to whatever this value is and add up to 6. So that's why we can just take the 6 and chop it in half, because it has to be the same number both times. Now, one thing to be aware of, right, I added 9 to the left side of this problem. We got to keep the equation in balance, so we need to add 9 to the right side as well. Okay? So x squared plus 6x plus 9 factors in 2x plus 3 times x plus 3. The lazy way to write that, or efficient. I believe I've heard the term efficient before. The efficient way to write it is x plus 3 squared is equal to 19. All right, you have successfully completed the square. Give yourself a little pat on the back. Nice job. We haven't yet solved, but we've completed the square. All right. Now here's where the solving comes in. We have something here squared, so I'm going to go ahead and take the square root of both sides. So let's see, I've got x plus 3 is equal to, I put the square root in the problem, so plus or minus. Root 19 is not going to simplify or reduce in any way, shape, or form, so we're going to leave it as root 19. And the last thing I want to do is isolate x. So I'm going to subtract 3 from both sides. And now I have solved for x. Okay? So that's the basics of completing the square. I promise you we're going to do some more. All right? I'm going to guess that there might be a few people looking at me going, or looking at this video going, yeah, I want to see that again. And that's what we're going to do. I'm going to go ahead and slide on down to problem number 3 here. You'll notice it's in standard form, which is great. It doesn't have to be, but it's just kind of nice that it is, because I'm about to quickly take it out of standard form. So x squared minus 8x. I'm going to leave myself that blank spot. Move the 2 to the other side, so negative 2. Now what's going to go in the blank spot? Well, you're going to take your b value, in this case negative 8, chop it in half, and square it. So half of negative 8 is negative 4. Negative 4 squared is a positive 16. What you add to the left side, make sure you add to the right side. Okay. Take a moment, and I want you to factor, right? We're going to factor up this left side. Well, if we've done completing the square correctly, this left side should factor into something squared. And this case would be x minus 4 squared is equal to, let's see, what is that, 14 here? It is, all right. So again, you've completed the square. Nice job, little pat on the back. It does say to solve, so we're going to keep going here. Let's take the square root of both sides. So x minus 4 is equal to plus or minus 14. Whoops, hold on. How about plus or minus the square root of 14? Got to put that in place if it is required. I can't take the square root of 14. I can't reduce the square root of 14, so I'm going to leave it. And take one more step here to add 4 to both sides to isolate x completely. Okay? So it's kind of nice. You'll notice there's a couple of things that are nice here. First thing, x squared has nothing in front of it other than a 1. And this middle term, easy enough to divide in half when it is an even value. All right? So let's see. Problem number 5. Looks a little intimidating at first because we realize that, oh, look, we have a 2 here. That's something new. However, what I'd like you to recognize is that you have 2, you have 4, and you have 10. And last time I checked, I can divide each one of these by 2. Perfectly legal in math, right? Everything is being divided. So we're still maintaining our equation. And now I have a problem that is just like what we've been doing. And so what I'm going to do is leave the first 2 terms on the left. I'm going to move that 5 over. Okay. I need to complete the square. So I'm going to take the middle term. I am going to chop it in half. Right. So 2 divided by 2. Take that value and square it. Lots of 2's in that little expression there. So 2 over 2 is 1. 1 squared is, well, 1. What you add to the left, go ahead and add to the right to keep, again, that equation in balance. The left side is going to factor into x plus 1 times another x plus 1, so x plus 1 squared. We've completed the square. And 5 plus 1 is 6. Yay, we have completed the square. So I'm going to go ahead and solve this by taking the square root of both sides. So x plus 1 is equal to plus or minus root 6. Again, root 6 not going to be able to be reduced or simplified, so leave it. Take one last step to isolate the x term completely, so negative 1 plus or minus root 6. And you have absolutely solved for x. There's no need in these problems to rewrite it as 2 different answers, nor do you need to write me the decimal equivalents unless the directions explicitly say to give decimals. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and cut this video right now. I will pop up a second video on completing the square that will go through the other 3 problems. I just went through the odd ones right now. So if you want to, give those odd, even problems a try. And then if you want to check in with the video to see if you did them correctly, that would be a great idea. I hope this has helped explain a little bit about completing the square and how the process works.